All right, so we're going to talk about the 6 main rights that you get from copyright protection, and actually you have a little surprise at the end of that one. Let's talk about right number 1, which is the right to reproduce.
Right. Section 106 of the Copyright Act sets forth, as you said, 6 exclusive rights that the owner of the copyright in any creative work owns once the work is created and fixed, as we talked about earlier. So the right to reproduce, that's really the fundamental part of the Copyright Act. It's the right to make a copy of something. Whether it's a photocopy, whether it's a reproduction of a digital work, an MP3, all of that, that's what the right to reproduce is. It has to be authorized by the owner of the copyright, which may be the author, and it may be someone who's acquired those rights from the author.
So my sheet music, my MP3, you name it, if I've created it, I've got the right to copy it or not.
Correct.
And I've got the right to grant that to someone to copy it or not.
Correct.
All right, right number 2, the right to distribute or distribute for profit.
Right. That is exactly what it sounds like. You write a song, you want to distribute that song. There's only a couple ways to distribute a song. One would be to make a recording of the song. Another would be to create sheet music or lead sheet or chord charts with lyrics or something. But if I'm in your band and you give me a lead sheet, I don't have the right of your song. I don't have the right to photocopy that and give it out to everybody else who wants to play the song. You have that right, not me. So that's distribution. Same with it if you make a sound recording. You have the right to distribute it. No one else does unless you authorize that right.
So all my MP3s that I make, I decide where they go.
Right. Now, of course, there's the practical aspect that if you put MP3s on a website and allow people to download them, even if you say you can't copy it, you've lost control of that.
Right.
You have not surrendered your rights, but as a practical matter, that horse is way out of the barn.
Right, we can't get it back. All right, copyright right number 3, the right to public performance.
Well, that applies to works that can be publicly performed. A painting can't really be publicly performed, although I guess you could argue that the author that created a play out of Sunday in the Park with George, the painting, but the painting isn't actually being publicly performed. That is exactly also what it sounds like, although for music it can include a performance over the radio, over television, over the internet, that kind of thing. But it's the right to perform music, whether it's a song. Well, we'll get into some of these distinctions. In the music business, a song has a public performance right. A sound recording does not.
Okay, now you got to explain that.
Okay, so you're listening to an FM radio broadcast. It's not a webcast. It's a broadcast over the air. And again, the radio plays White Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Since the song has a public performance right, the radio broadcast of that song has to be authorized by the owner of the copyright, the Irving Berlin Publishing Company. There are blanket licenses that sign up, that radio stations pay this blanket license so that anything in the catalog they can play. Mm-hmm. And that gives them authorization. So let's say it's the recording by, I don't know, Shania Twain, and let's say it's owned by MCA Nashville. Mm-hmm. The sound recording has no public performance right. So when that song, when Shania Twain's recording of White Christmas is broadcast, she's not entitled to any license fee for that. And the radio station does not need her authorization or the label's authorization to perform that sound recording, to perform that record.
So the only people that are owed licensing fees or any type of royalties would be the owner of the song copyright, as you said.
That's correct. Now that's a specific situation with broadcast.
Okay.
The 6th exclusive right that's listed in Section 106 is the digital transmission right. Mm-hmm. And that's where the public performance aspect of a sound recording gets compensated for it. In other words, when the radio station is simulcasting
Mm-hmm.
over the web,
Mm-hmm.
that's a digital transmission. Now that performance becomes a licensable event, and the radio station that's webcasting has to get permission and pay a royalty.
So
Same
the
with
first,
satellite radio.
So first royalty was just for the song.
Right.
But when you get into digital transmission, then now the sound recording itself is licensable, as you say.
Right. So if you're listening to Sirius
Mm-hmm.
XM, and again, we'll just stick with White Christmas, Shania Twain's label gets paid because it's a digital transmission, satellite radio, and Irving Berlin gets paid also.
Okay.
So the radio station has to pay both rights holders because they're separate rights holders.
Wow.
It isn't, I mean, think about it though. If there's no public performance right in a sound recording, that means all those years that there was broadcast radio only, AM or FM,
Mm-hmm.
only the songwriters were getting paid, not the recording artists. So think of one of your favorite cover songs.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the artist that maybe had the biggest hit with it may not have gotten any royalties whatsoever. You're familiar with the song "You've Lost That Love and Feeling," right?
Yes.
Okay. So the Righteous Brothers had the first big hit with it. It was written by Cynthia Mann and Barry Wheel back about 1965. Huge, huge record. Probably played every day in the United States on some oldie station. Probably
True.
more than once.
And in lots of movies.
And in lots of movies. Well, that's a different aspect, though. This is public performance. The Righteous Brothers received no money whatsoever from all that radio play. None. Man and Wheel, the songwriters,
Mm-hmm.
got very rich.
Wow.
So did the publisher. And then, you know, Hall & Oates re-recorded the song.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't get any money from the broadcast of their record either. Man and Wheel got more money.
So if they wanted to do that, then they would have had to have transmitted it digitally some way.
Correct.
And that's how they get paid for the sound recording, their particular capturing or recording of that song.
Exactly right. And of course, that technology didn't exist until the 90s. And so there's 30 years of broadcast of that record that is uncompensated.
All right, let's talk about right number 4, which is the right to create derivative works. And what would qualify as a derivative work?
Well, that's a good question. Derivative works are a work in another form based on the original work. A made-for-TV movie of Harper Valley PTA based on the song. That's a derivative work.
Okay.
The movie To Kill a Mockingbird based on the book. That's a derivative work of the book. That's what derivative work is, a new work created based on a previous work.
Okay.
You don't, I mean, you see it mostly, music videos are derivative works of songs. They're also derivative works of sound recordings. So to make the music video, the author of the song has to give permission. Most often, the author of the song is also the recording artist who's in the video, and you know, it's just handled that way. So that's a derivative work.
Okay. What about if you take a song and alter it in some way?
Well, if you add a verse, write new lyrics, rewrite the melody, that's a derivative work for which you need permission.
Okay.
You cannot do that. Now, there is an exception in the copyright law that applies only to musical compositions with respect to subsequent works. Once a copyright owner of a song has authorized a sound recording,
Mm-hmm.
and that sound recording has been distributed to the public,
Mm-hmm.
then anyone else can record that song. And they can pay what's called a compulsory license.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's some limits on what can be done. You can change the pronouns. You know, if it's a he song, you can make it a her song.
Okay.
If you're a reggae band and you want to do a reggae version of White Christmas, you can do it in your style.
Okay.
But you can't add verses. You can't change melodies. I mean, you can play a little bit based on how the singer sings a song, that kind of thing.
Right.
But you can't make any substantive changes to the song. But in exchange for that, you don't have to get permission. You simply pay a license fee.
Right.
Okay.
All right, let's talk about right number 5, which is the right to public display, which is kind of weird when you talk about songs.
Well, it is, but in the digital era, I mean, the way songs used to be displayed is you had lyric books or you had song books or sheet music.
Mm-hmm.
If you remember Mitch Miller and the television show, they would display the lyrics along the bottom of the screen, and a little bouncing ball would show you where you're supposed to be singing.
Okay, that's like before my time.
Yeah, well, it was before most everybody's time now. It's a display, but you see that kind of stuff on the internet all the time. You go to a website for a song, the lyrics are there, the chords may be there. That's the display. That's a display of the song.
Oh, okay.
The sheet music, that's a display of the song. So that has to be authorized. Because that's one of the exclusive rights. You know, I don't have the right to put the sheet music or the notes or the lyrics of someone else's songs on a web page without their permission.
I see.
Same as in a book. You know, you see lyrics quoted in a book all the time. Those are authorized. The author or the publisher will get permission. So. I'm trying to think of the magazines that used to do lyrics and sheet music on a regular basis. Oh, Downbeat does it for jazz. That has to be authorized.
Cool. All right, and let's talk about right number 6, the right of digital distribution, and we can talk about the Digital Millennium Copyright Act of 1998.
The Digital Millennium Copyright Act basically provided it created the YouTube nation in a way. It created a safe harbor for internet service providers to transmit or traffic in copyrighted works without permission, as long as they provided that if the rights holder objected, that would be taken down upon the objection. That's essentially what it did. That's the most significant part of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act.
Okay. All right. Now there's a special hidden right, if you will. Why don't you tell us about that?
Right. The 6 rights we've talked about are laid out in Section 106 of the Copyright Act. There is what I call the great unwritten right under copyright, and that's the right to say no. The owner of a copyright cannot be compelled, except under certain circumstances, to authorize anybody to use his or her work in any way, shape, or form. That decision and that authorization remains with the author. So if I've written a poem and you want to publish it, you have to have my permission. If you want to make a song out of it, you have to have my permission. If you want to make a film out of it, you have to have my permission. And there's nothing you can do that can compel me to give you permission.
Okay.
So I can keep my works close and never let them out of my sight, never give them legs, as you said earlier, to go out into the world and earn a living. Okay. That's my right. There's reasons why people don't want certain works exploited. Maybe they don't think it's good, maybe they don't like it, maybe it's a bad memory, but that right remains, except for songs. As I said earlier, if the song has been recorded with the permission of the songwriter or whoever owns the rights, so that means that bootlegs don't trigger this loss of right. A bootleg does not, because it's not authorized. Right, exactly. Once the song has been recorded and that recording's been basically distributed to the public, anybody else can record that song and will have to pay a license fee, and that fee is 9.1 cents per copy right now, and it's been that for a few years.
Under 5 minutes, right?
Right, exactly. Exactly. You go over 5 minutes, then you start paying on a per minute rate. Right. So, but the right to say no goes away. So if you're Irving Berlin and you just found Elvis Presley horrible, there's not a thing you could do about his record. He's just going to put it out, and there's nothing you can do about it. You're going to make money. You should be happy because it's going to sell a lot of copies. But You know, it's interesting. It's that forfeiture of the right to say no only applies to songwriters and musical compositions.
So anything else that I might create that's an original work, I can, as you say, keep it close to my vest all my life if I want to. And even if I let you read it or see it, you still can't take it and build anything off of it or with it without my permission.
That's right. If I write a story,
Mm-hmm.
and I go out and I found a publisher and they publish the story. Let's say it's in a magazine.
Mm-hmm.
I give them permission to publish it one time,
Mm-hmm.
in print, and that's it. No one else can take that story and publish it.
I see.
And in fact, the publisher that I've licensed it to is limited to whatever the terms of the license are. They can't just keep publishing it unless I've given them an open license.
I see.
And if I do a painting, if I do a screenplay, if I do a poem,
Mm-hmm.
anything. But if I do a musical composition and I allow that composition to be recorded,
Mm-hmm.
and that recording is distributed, I've lost my right to say no. It's the only work, it's the only type of creative work that forfeiture applies to.